Thanks for stopping by the channel. Hope that you find all the content here compelling and useful. I also hope that if you aren't a subscriber, you will subscribe and that you will interact with the content you find here. Today, or this video that you're going to be watching is going to take a little bit of a different tack. It's going to be right in line with much of what I have to say in a lot of situations, but it's also going to be a little bit more pointed towards the idea of what patriotism or being a constitutionally minded member of We the People really looks like. So from the outset of the response to COVID-19 here in the United States, and exclusively in the United States, because of the fact that we are a constitutional republic, I have been making quite a few observations. Probably one of the most powerful observations that I have made since the middle of March, especially as it relates to Minnesota, is the fact that a good portion of the people of Minnesota seem to be singularly focused on one thing and one thing only, and that is safety and security. Now, I know that sounds like two things, but they're part and parcel of the same package. We are very much of a mindset here in the United States, but especially in greater Minnesota, or even really in the urban area of Minnesota, we are very much the mindset that safety is above and beyond everything else that is important. Security falls into that. So the reason why I'm making this distinction or talking about this is because of the way we have been responding to the very rapid erosion of our liberties here in Minnesota. By and large, the silent majority in Minnesota is reported as being against shutdowns, against the designation of certain people being essential and other people not being essential. This silent majority tends to allegedly not really appreciate the idea of the governor, just for lack of better terminology, arbitrarily extending his emergency powers with no end in sight. Along with that, when different municipalities, no matter the size of the city or the township or the town or the village, when mayors would issue mask mandates, facial covering mandates, people went along with it, all the while complaining about how much they're over it. Then the governor steps in and does the same thing, and people complain. This is too much, this is too far, but they go along with it. If you look at the way shutdowns and social distancing were handled, people complained about not being able to see their loved ones in long-term care facilities, not being able to see their loved ones in hospitals, not being able to see their loved ones who are in some sort of treatment program or in mental health care facilities. I've heard people complain about not being able to see their loved ones in person as they're incarcerated for crimes that they've committed. People talk about these things. And there seems to be on the periphery of these conversations some sort of understanding that this isn't right. There's something about this that's just not okay, but I don't want to say too much. I don't want to rock the boat because Minnesota nice. I'm in Minnesota. We have this reputation for being Minnesota nice. I will tell you that's a lie. There is no such thing as Minnesota nice. It's Minnesota passive aggressive. That's what it is. Minnesota has cornered the market on passive aggressive behavior. And some of the nastiest people that you're going to run into in Minnesota are the passive aggressive, allegedly nice people. I use an example of an interaction at a local retail superstore here in the last couple of weeks, where a older lady who would probably consider herself to be one of the nicest people that she knows jumped all over me because she felt I was in violation of a law. It's just, for lack of a polite way of saying this, Minnesotans are spineless. They're spineless. Things that should have been outraging Minnesotans back in the middle of March just didn't. They didn't outrage them until it started to hit where it really hurt: fall sports. Now, I've heard and read and observed conversations and discussions and debates about schools opening back up and what are we going to do? We need to get our kids back into school, yada, yada, yada. We're messing with their lives, we're messing with their socialization. We got to get, whatever it takes to get these kids safely back into school. Whatever it takes. There have been appeals to the Minnesota Department of Education. There's been appeals to Governor Walz. We need our kids back in school. So the governor, in his wisdom, if that's the right word, said, I'm going to leave it up to the individual school districts. You come up with a plan, you submit the plan, you let us know how you're going to do it, you manage this the way you see fit. Wish the governor would have done that with everybody else. That would have been nice. But one of the decisions that was made by the Minnesota State High School Sports League was that there would be no fall football. And I think that also included volleyball. Yeah, it did. It did include volleyball. Minnesotan parents and students lost their minds. They went completely nuts. In some cases, it was ballistic. Parents were coming unglued, demanding that their children be allowed to play volleyball, demanding that their children be allowed to play football. Don't you know what kind of rite of passage fall sports are? And this motivated Minnesotan people in a way that none of the other situations that are happening here in the state of Minnesota ever did. They came alive. They protested, they rallied, they sent emails, they made phone calls, they showed up at meetings, and they went out and they petitioned and argued and debated, and they explained how vitally important this was, that these kids deserve to play football in the fall, they deserve to play volleyball in the fall. And guess what happened? They won. They won because they stood up and they presented a unified front. And then they went silent again. Here's why this is a problem. Football in the fall, volleyball in the fall, are traditions. I ran cross country. Don't look at me now. I ran cross country from my freshman year, which was the earliest year that I could at that time in sports history in the state of Iowa. I ran varsity cross country starting in my freshman year of school, all fall. And I did that every year until I graduated. I get the tradition. I get the nostalgic feeling. I know why we want our kids to have these experiences. But here's the problem, Minnesota. Here's why this is an issue. You didn't give a rip about anything else. You don't give a rip about the infringement on the First Amendment, the freedom of assembly. You haven't given a rip about the First Amendment as it applies to people having the right to gather for worship. Unfettered. Unfettered. The Constitution of the United States, the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights, states that Congress will make no law abridging freedom of worship or the free exercise thereof, or any expression of religious worship or gathering at all, period. Now, if Congress can't do that, neither can the governor, because the governor is an executive. He is not a legislator. So, think with me, if you will. Is football a right? In the degree that it falls within the First Amendment, to some sense, yes. Same thing with volleyball. To some sense, it's a freedom of assembly. It's the freedom to associate with and spend time with anybody that you so desire, doing whatever it is that you feel fit, as long as it falls within the lines of established law. But Minnesota, you didn't care about the erosion of all of your natural rights, the negative rights that are ensconced, that are outlined and detailed within the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. You didn't care about any of that. The only thing that fired you up was the loss of an experience for your precious children, and ultimately vicariously for you, because it reminded you of your youth. That's sickening, and it's maddening, frankly. Where is that passion? Where's that vim and that vigor? Where is that fiery resistance to totalitarian, tyrannical, despotic dictums from on high that say you will not do these things? Where were you when your churches were shut down for months? Where were you when your neighbor's business was being destroyed by unconstitutional government edicts? Where were you when people were being ordered to cover their faces or not being allowed to shop? You were covering your face and probably looking all askew and all askance with evil eyes at the person that you see in the store without a facial covering on, thinking you're mean, you're not following the law, which isn't a law, by the way. Where were you in all those situations? Why is this the thing that you cared about? And why, once you won that fight, did you stop fighting? See, part and parcel of being a citizen, part and parcel of being we the people, isn't just fighting for the things that you love and care about. Part and parcel of fighting for your rights is also doing it to protect the rights, to protect the liberties of the people that you love, that you live around, that you're surrounded by. Our goal isn't just to secure these things for ourselves. Our goal isn't to just prevent our liberties being eroded. Our goal is to protect those liberties for future generations. And not just because we're passionate about one particular thing, First Amendment, Second Amendment, Third Amendment, Fourth Amendment, or the freedom to play football, which for most of these students isn't going to amount to a hill of beans. It's not going to do anything for them. They're going to graduate and they're never going to play football again. They're going to graduate and they're never going to run cross country again. They're going to graduate and they're never going to play volleyball again. It's selfishness is what it is. Where were you standing up for the liberty of your neighbor to go see their 87, 97, 98-year-old family member in a nursing home who eventually died alone without ever seeing anybody they cared about for months? You didn't fight for that. Why weren't you out fighting for people to be able to have unrestricted funerals during this pandemic? But you can certainly fight for a perceived right to play football or volleyball. And that's what's wrong with Minnesota. Quite frankly, that's what's wrong with the United States. This silent majority who oppose all of these restrictions doesn't exist. Because you're only interested in what you're interested in. You're only interested in what's been taken from you that's tangible. Football, volleyball. And you don't care about what kind of country you're delivering, not just to your children, but to your children's children and their children and the future generations that follow those children. So what? Your kids are going to play football this fall. So what? Your kids are going to play volleyball this fall. Who cares? What's it matter if down the road they're playing volleyball, but they don't have the freedom to assemble in church? And don't tell me it's not going to happen in the United States. We're seeing churches shut down all over in this country right now. Over what? But your kids are playing football, so you won your victory. Time to pack it up and go home. No, that's not how we're supposed to be. I've been catching a lot of flack over the last couple of days. You don't have that many followers. Nobody cares about your opinion. Nobody really needs to know what you think. What's it matter? Why don't you just shut up? You're a conspiracy theorist. You don't give a crap about anybody because you don't really believe the virus is real, which I have never said, by the way. I acknowledge COVID-19 is a reality. I just deny it's as severe as everybody says it is. But the thing that keeps coming back to is nobody really pays attention to your channel. Just stop. Just stop making videos. Here's the deal. I'm not doing this for me. I'm not doing this for my gratification. I'm not doing this for my edification. I'm not even doing this for you. I'm doing it so that the world that I leave to my children and to my granddaughter and my other future grandchildren and my great-grandchildren and my brother's children and his grandchildren, I'm doing this so that the world we leave them is in better shape than it is now. So if one person is impacted, even if it's not about one particular issue that I really care about, that I'm passionate about, First or the Second Amendment or any of the other amendments, but if this touches home with one other person and it inspires them to take a stand so that they can take a stand and then stand for somebody else on an issue that's maybe not quite as important to them, they'll do that. But the problem is, the silent majority is not a majority, but it is silent. As long as I'm safe and secure from a virus, and my governor is protecting me, and my kids can play football and volleyball, then I'm just going to toe the line. I'm just going to do what I'm told to do. I'm not going to rock the boat. Why? Because I got what I want. I got what I care about. My kids have their football and their volleyball, and I have that vicarious excitement of being able to go and watch them in their senior year or whatever the case might be. But I'm not going to speak out when other people's rights, legitimate rights, actual constitutionally enshrined rights are being eroded. I don't want to speak out because I could lose my job. I could be labeled a radical, a rebel. I could be violating some sort of weird sanction. No, I don't believe the silent majority in the state of Minnesota really cares about these things, because if they did, they wouldn't wait until football is taken away. They wouldn't wait until fall volleyball is taken away. They would have been speaking out back in March when churches were closed. They would have been speaking out back in March when loved ones couldn't see each other in long-term care facilities. They would have been, even if it didn't affect them. We've forgotten the world, the nation, the republic that our forefathers fought for and literally bled for and died for. We've forgotten that because it's just words on a piece of really old parchment paper protected under sealed vacuum glass. But don't touch my football. Don't touch my volleyball. Don't make my kids' lives a little bit uncomfortable, because then I'll lose my ever-loving mind. Until I win. Now imagine if all of us stood up and finally said, enough is enough. We're not going to take it anymore. It is the duty of every we the people to resist tyranny when it raises its ugly fanged head. Not just when you lose something that's kind of important to you. Shame on you, Minnesota, for caring more about fall sports than you do the Constitution. If we lose this fight, it won't be my fault. And it won't be the fault of the other people out there who are speaking their minds and being laughed at by people like you. If this is going to be your fault, then you'll have no one to blame but yourself for allowing it to happen. You've demonstrated that fall sports are more important to you than constitutional liberties and constitutional government. You should be ashamed. Sic semper tyrannis.